So inshallah we'll read through a bit of, in regards to fasting. The fact is that when it comes to the ahkam of fasting, rulings of fasting, there are rulings which are known as the ahkam zahira, apparent rulings. For example, you are not allowed to eat, or certain actions you cannot do, all of the legalities. Then there are rulings which are ahkam batina. There are the spiritual paradigms, spiritual rulings behind our ibadat. For example, in your salah, you have certain positions, you have ruku', you have sujood, you have an order it's done in, you have a way that it's done, right? There's the legalities, the fiqh, the ahkam related to it. Then there is the batini ahkam as well. For example, you have khushu' in salah. Just as, for example, you say Surah Al-Fatiha, right? Taking the opinion that Surah Al-Fatiha is wajib in salah, right? You have certain rulings. If you do not fulfill them in the salah will not take place. Same way, for example, many ulama, when speaking about the batini ahkam, the inner related ahkam, the spiritual ahkam, they say that khushu' in salah, for example, is wajib. Likewise, there are many maqasid, there are many purposes which the fasting will bring, there are many benefits, and there are many books as well as chapters of books besides just chapters of a hadith which speak about fasting. So the ulama will speak about fasting from the spiritual, asrar, the secrets that one can extract from it, the benefits, all of these spiritual ruhani benefits that can be extracted from the fasting. And again, as I mentioned, there's so many points and there's so many places that this could be read about, but inshallah we're just going to try to read through a little bit of what one of the ulama, Imam Ghazali rahimahullah in specific, has written about fasting. And this is just one part of the chapter of the book of ibadat, book of worship, in that he has a section on the asrar al-sawm, on the secrets of fasting, and the shurutuhul batina. It's inner conditions. So to any worship there are the exterior, as I mentioned earlier, conditions, and then there are the inner conditions. Okay, so everything which is related to the spiritual paradigm, Imam Ghazali rahimahullah would speak about some of it. So he says that the fasting is upon three levels. You have 3 levels of fasting, and essentially you have 3 types of people who are on those levels of fasting, and they're beneficiaries of the fast. They benefit from the fast upon 3 levels and in 3 different ways. One being the sawmul umum, the fasting of the general people. And you'll see where Imam Ghazali rahimahullah goes with this later on. The first being the fasting of the general people, which is just for one to stop his from fulfilling the desire of his stomach as well as his sexual desire. And he says that, of course, this was this utmost amount, this limited small amount, which is the mere necessary amount. This amount I have already spoken about. The second type of people are the sawmul khusus. So what was mentioned earlier was the fast of the general people. Next is the fast of a group of special people. There are people who do this, they stop their stomach and their sexual desires, but at the same time, they also do kaffu sam' wal basar wal lisan wal yad wal rijl wa sa'ir al jawarih an al atham. They stop their hearing, their sight, their tongue, their hands, their feet, and all of their limbs from committing any sin. And then you have a third level of fasting, which is the fasting of the selected from the special people. So you have the fasting of the special people, then you have sawmu khususil khusus, the selected people from those special people. And he says that this is the example of our pious predecessors, the Anbiya alayhim salatu wasalam, and the ulama. What is this fasting? This is when the heart fasts and the mind it fasts from any thoughts and from being busy with anything besides Allah Ta'ala. This is when the heart it completely empties itself from the dunya. Right? We know that the heart is what? It's a vessel, it's a container, it's a wi'a. There's a narration, for example, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah mentions that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam said, your heart is a vessel, your heart is a container. Okay, it will either contain the dunya or it will contain the hereafter. Right? So this very high level of fasting, which is the selected people, their fast is that they fast from thinking of the dunya and from busying their hearts with the dunya. And so now for these people, their conditions are different as well. Of course, this is not, again, these are not fiqhi ahkam. This is important to be understood. These are not fiqhi legal ahkam. These are he's speaking, only in the realm of spirituality. These people are not worried about, their last worry is a morsel that's going to go into their mouth and break their fast. Their worry is that a thought of dunya is going to come into my heart which will ruin my fast. This is their level of what they're trying to abstain. And so he mentions that we learn from this that the fast by its nature is actually what? It's tark. It's to leave things. So the first people, what are they doing? They're leaving food and drink. They're leaving their other desires. The second people, they are leaving any sort of sin. They're leaving any sort of sin and any sort of wrong action they can do with their limbs. And the third group, the selected of the special people, these people are leaving everything completely with their direction towards Allah Ta'ala. They're leaving everything with their direction towards Allah Ta'ala. And this is, you have the hadith, that kan Allah Ta'ala is there. This is the people who really embed within themselves belief in Allah Ta'ala. Right? Everything goes back to that belief in Allah Ta'ala. That Allah is there, kan Allah wa lam yakun ma'ahu shay'. That Allah Ta'ala is there and there is nothing. When He was there, when there was nothing, and He's always there and He will always be there. And Allah Ta'ala is the only reality. And besides Allah Ta'ala, everything is dependent upon Him. Therefore, the existence of anything besides Allah Ta'ala is really nothing but Allah Ta'ala's existence. Everything depends on the existence of Allah Ta'ala. And so this is, then he goes on to speak about the second group, which was the fasting of the special people. And he says that this fast, which is to not only fast from food and from your desires, but as well as stopping your limbs from committing sin, this can happen with 6 conditions. Number 1 being that you protect your sight. You protect your sight. And you protect it from everything which has been deemed wrong to look at by the Sharia. And anything which can, through the channel of the vision, make its way to the heart and distract the heart. You block away every single thing possible. Why? Because again, your vision is a channel to your heart. The Prophet ﷺ said, and he mentions the hadith, "An-nadhratu sahmun min masmumun min sihami iblis," that the vision and the sight is a poisoned arrow from the arrows of Iblis, from the arrows of Shaitan. فَمَنْ تَرَكَهَا خَوْفًا مِنَ اللَّهِ آتَاهُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ إِيمَانًا يَجِدُ حَلَاوَتَهُ فِي قَلْبِهِ. Anyone who will leave this evil vision, which is to look at haram, anyone who will leave this, Allah Ta'ala will give him in his heart an iman, a type of iman by which he'll find its sweetness. He'll find its sweetness. One thing we can take from this and from everything is that all of these things, they build inside of us resilience. They build, you need stamina for any task. If you really want to benefit from the fast, you have to practice these things and you have to build stamina. You have to build the stamina to practice this stuff. That's when you're going to actually benefit from the fast. And then what happens? Then Allah Ta'ala blesses you to feel the sweetness of it. Allah Ta'ala blesses you to taste the sweetness of it. He mentions a few more ahadith in regards to that as well, that in regards to the sight as well. But just to move on to the next thing, which he says, the second is that to protect the tongue from saying anything evil, and in specific al-hadayan, which is one form of speech, which is to say, to just talk irrelevant speech, kadhib, which is to lie, ghibah, which is to backbite, namimah, which is to spread news around and to take the speech of one people and take it to another people, fuhsh, which is illicit, explicit bad speech, or to say anything rude to anyone, or to argue with people. All of these forms of speech, you're supposed to what? You're supposed to do sawmul lisan. Your tongue is supposed to fast. And so some of the tabi'een, they would say that there are two things which will ruin your fast. One is ghibah, one is backbiting, and one is lying. And then he mentions the hadith, which is that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that the fasting is a protection, and if one of you is fasting, then he should not say anything ill, and he should not fight with anyone. And if anyone is to try to entertain a fight with him or curse him, then he should say to him, inni sa'im, I am fasting, I am fasting. He mentions another narration, which is that two women came to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and they were feeling pain of hunger and thirst. They were feeling pain, stomach pain out of hunger and thirst, until the point where they were going to completely destroy themselves. They said, we feel like we're going to die. So the Messenger of Allah Ta'ala told them that the Messenger of Allah Ta'ala asked for that a bowl be brought, a container be brought. And then he told them that to vomit into this. And so then the Messenger of Allah Ta'ala, he said to them that this is for the act of ghibah, the meat of the person that you were eating. This is the consequences of that. And so what did you do? You fasted from which was halal. You fasted from which was halal, and you opened your fast upon which was haram. You opened your fast upon which was haram. And Imam Ghazali rahimahullah will expand upon this as well. The third thing being to control your hearing, because of course if you cannot engage and speak in something which is haram, you're not supposed to listen to it either. And this is mentioned in in ayah within the Quran as well, that he brings as a proof for that. And so there is, Imam Ghazali rahimahullah mentions, there is no necessity and there is no reason to fast, which is to stop from eating any halal food, but then to open your fast upon haram. And the example of that person is like a person who he builds a castle, but he destroys a town. You build a castle, but man yabni qasran wa yahdimu misran. You're trying to build one castle, but you're destroying the whole town. And then he gives other examples for that as well. And he says that how is a person supposed to benefit if he's going to not protect himself from these things? The fourth thing, which is to stop. الرابع كف بقية الجوارح عن الآثام من اليد والرجل عن المكاره وكف البطن عن الشبهات وقت الإفطار. The fourth thing is to stop any limbs from doing anything wrong, from your hand to your leg. Again, this is all pertaining to the special form of fasting, which was the second level, and to make sure that anything which is there's a doubt in it during the iftar time, your stomach should be held back from partaking into that. The fifth thing being that when it's time for iftar, do not eat too much either. Right? Do not eat too much either. Why? Because then that really kills the purpose. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as he said, that there's nothing that is filled worse. There's no container that can be filled worse than the stomach of Ibn Adam. And he mentions that when looking at the habit of the human being, he said that it's a very nice point. He says that if you starve yourself and you push yourself away from something you desire so much, and then you allow yourself to have it and to have it as much as you want, then the whole purpose, which was to control the nafs, it will be lost. And then the desire of the nafs, which was supposed to be capped, it will only grow more. It will only grow more. Because that's what happens to the nafs. When the nafs wants something, right? It's a child that cries, and it will keep crying until you give it what it wants. So what are you supposed to do? That's what the fast is for, right? It's tark. Fasting is to leave everything. It's to stop. So what should one person do? His prescription is that the same amount that you would eat in a normal day, eat that much, right? And he says over here that, but what happens? So many foods are, and this is quite shocking. He's saying it from his time. He's approximately 5th century Hijri. That people are gathering all types of foods that they would never eat outside of the month of Ramadan. They're eating it in the month of Ramadan, right? And this is something not good for ourselves, not good for our households either, right? This form of, I remember Sheikh Sudais, he was saying in a khutbah that, the month of Ramadan comes, it's a month of worship, and now the men are supposed to, of course, busy themselves, but the women are supposed to busy themselves in worship as well. But what happens, as I remember his words, he says, تَوَسَّعُوا فِي أَطَايِبِ الطَّعَامِ. But now the family, they want different types of foods. They want to eat this and they want to eat that. And now, the household, they themselves are busy. They themselves are busy in, making different types of foods. And then, of course, if you're going to be, distracting yourself with this type of food and that type of food, then the whole concept, which is abstinence, this is what fasting is supposed to teach you, that concept will be lost. And so as he says over here that the ruh as-sawm, the soul of fasting, and the sirruhu, the secret and the mystery of fasting, which one is supposed to gain, it's lost. And that is that you're supposed to weaken those channels and that strength which the shaitan uses to make his way to you, and that being your stomach. That being your stomach, one of the channels by which the shaitan will try to make his way to you. For example, it's a statement of Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah as well, that that there are veins inside of a person which the shaitan runs through. So what are you supposed to do through fasting? ضَيِّقُ مَجَارِ الشَّيْطَانِ, right? Tighten those channels, those vessels in which the shaitan will try to travel. And the sixth quality, the sixth condition that a person should try to observe is that your heart after iftar, your heart after the iftar should be between a state of fear and a state of hope. Your heart should be between a state of fear and between a state of hope, because you fear that you did not observe the fast, right, the way you should have. And he mentions that this is the quality we're supposed to have after every ibadah. Why do we say istighfar after salah? Why do we say istighfar after other ibadat? Out of fear that we have weaknesses and we have shortcomings, and our attention and our devotion is so weak. Our attention and our devotion is so weak. So we ask Allah Ta'ala that He forgive us, for falling short, and we have fear for that. But at the same time, we have hope in the mercy of Allah Ta'ala. We have hope in the mercy of Allah Ta'ala. And so he mentions in regards to that, having the hope and the fear, he mentions that Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah once passed by a people and they were engaging in laughter. And he said that indeed Allah Ta'ala has made the month of Ramadan a racing track, a racetrack for His creation, that they may race, and they may compete towards good deeds and towards worship. And so when this track was made, what happened? Some people, they went ahead and they succeeded, and some people fell back and they failed. So he says that فَالْعَجَبْ كُلَّ الْعَجَبْ لِلضَّاحِكِ اللَّعِبِ فِي الْيَوْمِ الَّذِي فَازَ فِيهِ السَّابِقُونَ وَخَابَ فِيهِ الْمُبْطِلُونَ. That what a strange, what a shock it is, to see the person who is engaged in his laughter and his games, on the day when there are people who are succeeding and there are people who are failing. And he says that by Allah, if the veils were to be uplifted, then the person who did good, he wouldn't be able to see anything but his good, and the person who did bad and evil would not be able to see anything but his evil. And what that means is that the person who does good and his actions are accepted, his joy of that would busy him. And the person who doesn't do good, who doesn't busy himself in good actions, then the hasra, the nadama of the regret of having not done so, that will busy him so much from anything else. And so he says that, because he mentions in the chapter before this regarding to, and he was a Shafi'i scholar, so he mentions Shafi'i ahkam. So he says, I mentioned to you the ahkam of fasting, of which are the legal, zahiri, apparent ahkam, and now I mention to you the batini, the inner ahkam, so that you may observe them, and you may try your utmost capability to do them. And then he says, going on, that the human being is, and this is also now expanding on some of the virtue of fasting. The human being was created in a manner by which he was given a state above the animals with the light of his intellect and his heart, which he uses to break his desire. Right? You have a desire, you have shahwa, and animals also have shahwa. Shahwa referring to just internal desire. You have internal desire. Animals also have internal desire. The thing which we have, which the animals don't have, is the aql. The aql referring to not just the brain or the mind, but the illumination which Allah Ta'ala gives to the human being to be able to guide himself. This is the greater understanding of what the aql is. But he was given a place beneath the angels, in that he does have desires. So you have the animals who are mere desire, no aql. Then you have angels who are only aql and no desire. They can only understand the commandment of Allah Ta'ala and follow that commandment. And then you have us, the human beings, who have desire, but they also have the aql that they need to overcome their desire. And so as another scholar he mentions, so the one whose mind will overcome his desire, he will reach the community and become a part of the community of the angels. And the person whose desire then will overcome his mind, then he will fall down and below and ultimately, may Allah Ta'ala protect us, but ultimately join the community of the animals. And so these are some of the points which he mentions, and to just sum up in briefly, one point of the fasting which we gain from this is what it's to weaken our relationship with the material world. So the material world, which is our food, our dunya, the point of the fasting is to weaken that relationship. We're trying to weaken our relationship with the dunya and strengthen our relationship with the hereafter. Right? And as I mentioned, the athar, what Imam Ahmad rahimahullah narrates earlier, that your heart can only possess one of the two. It cannot possess both. Another benefit which we can take from this, which also was mentioned, I brushed over it, but he also mentions that the fasting allows the person to recognize your weakness and the strength of Allah Ta'ala, your dependence and the independence of Allah Ta'ala. So Allah Ta'ala is Samad, He is not in need of food, you are in need of these necessities which Allah Ta'ala has created, and therefore you fast to recognize this. You fast to recognize your poverty. And so there's a statement mentioned by one of the scholars, Ibn Ata'illah, that wurudul faqat a'yadul murideen. Wurudul faqat a'yadul murideen. That when difficulties come our way, for the people who want Allah Ta'ala, and the people whose desire is in their tawajjuh, their direction is towards Allah Ta'ala, for them these difficulties become Eid. These difficulties become days of celebration. Why? Because that only reminds you of what? Your weakness, which is something we all have to accept anyways. Your weakness and the strength of Allah Ta'ala. Your weakness and the strength of Allah Ta'ala. The fasting purifies the heart, it softens the heart. The fasting as well, it purifies the person from arrogance. It purifies the person from that lower self we were mentioning, his desire, and it allows him to polish his higher self, the more heavenly side of him, your ruh and your aql. And another point being that it breaks one's desire. It breaks one's desire, as we were mentioning earlier. It breaks one's desire. The fasting facilitates one having more time. It also teaches you focus. The fasting teaches you focus. If you can observe all of these things, then you'll be able to focus. You'll be able to have a good way of contemplation and reflection. And the fasting is a shield from shaitan. Inshallah, these are just some points that we can gain from this passage. We ask Allah Ta'ala that He give us the capability to prepare using these things, not just to read about them, but then inshallah then to implement them and to practice them when the month of Ramadan comes. Inshallah, as I mentioned earlier, for the next few weeks there will be more miscellaneous topics like this on fasting, or perhaps on Quran, and anything inshallah that could prepare myself and all of us for the month of Ramadan. We ask Allah Ta'ala that He give us tawfiq. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحان الله بحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك اللهم ونتوب إليك.